All right, let's get right into it. We're going to explore a pretty wild idea today. A theory that claims it can unify geometry, physics, and even human consciousness under one single elegant principle: balance.
I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? Finding balance in our lives. But what if it's not just a nice metaphor?
What if balance could actually be calculated, like a fundamental law of the universe that applies to pretty much everything? That's exactly what this explainer is all about. We're unpacking Crippin's theory, a framework that proposes there's a universal, measurable constant for balance, a hidden code, if you will. So, where does this whole thing start? Well, it begins with a simple but really profound observation of what the theory calls the universal pattern. You just have to look around. Patterns of balance are literally everywhere, from the massive spiral of a galaxy down to the petals on a flower. The key insight here is that these aren't just random, pretty shapes. They follow a deep underlying mathematical logic. Okay, so if these patterns are all over the place, there has to be some kind of logic behind them, right? A rulebook. And that brings us to the next big idea, the equation for balance. At the very core of this theory is one single formula, which it calls the seed that everything else grows from. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. The theory says balance isn't about being perfectly still or static. Forget that image of a perfectly balanced scale. Instead, picture a tightrope walker. They're making constant tiny adjustments to stay up there. It's an active, dynamic rhythm. And that state of active harmony, that's called the T state.
And here it is, the core formula. T, which is the constant of balance, is the product of three key variables: P for proportion, the Greek letter kappa for phase, and R for resonance.
I know, it looks like abstract math, but we can make it super clear with an analogy. Think about running a marathon. First up, you've got P for proportion. This is your optimal design, your ideal stride length, your perfect posture. It's about being built for efficiency. Next is kappa, or phase. This is all about rhythm and timing. It's finding that perfect pace so you can keep going for miles without burning out. And finally, there's R for resonance. This is your stable energy output, that sustained flow that keeps you from just collapsing. When you get all three of those things working together perfectly, proportion, phase, and resonance, that's when you hit the T state. You find your flow. So how does the system achieve that T state? Well, the theory says it happens when two conceptual forces are in a perfect state of tension. You have the expressive force, or the reality field. That's all the energy you can see and measure, the outward push of a system. Then you have the containing force, which is metaphorically called the black matter field. This is the unseen inward pull that gives the system its structure and stability. Real balance happens when these two are in a perfect tug of war. Okay, now hang on, because this is where the theory takes a really fascinating leap. It suggests this whole equation doesn't just apply to things out there in the physical world. It also applies to our minds, through what it calls the four shapes of thought. The idea is that our minds use a kind of cognitive geometry based on four basic shapes to make sense of everything. First up is the triangle. Think sharp, think focus. The triangle is linked to clarity and direction. It's that mental process of setting a goal and pointing your attention right at it. Then you've got the circle. This one's all about connection, empathy, the things that bring us back to feeling whole. It's that feedback loop of understanding ourselves and how we relate to others. The square, you can probably guess this one. It's stability, it's structure. In our minds, this represents things like setting boundaries, building good habits, and creating the safety and fairness we need to function. And finally, my personal favorite, the spiral. This symbolizes growth and integration. It's the whole process of learning, where you take your past experiences and fold them back into yourself to create new insights, spiraling up to a new level. So if this language of balance works for physics and for our own minds, what's next? Can we scale it up even further to an entire society? That leads us to the most ambitious part of the theory, how you could design a resonant city. This vision is all about creating a living ratio city, a totally regenerative model for how we could live together, where the well-being of people and the health of the planet are treated as two sides of the same balanced equation. And this isn't just some abstract fantasy. The theory translates into very specific, tangible rules. In a proposed design for a renewed Hollywood, for example, these principles are law. The law of equal proportion means for every square foot of concrete, you have to have a square foot of living green space. The economy is circular and local, no big corporate chains allowed. Even sound and light are designed for harmony, with public spaces acoustically tuned to reduce stress and a night protocol that switches off unnecessary lights to give the stars back to the sky. So after all that, after going from a universal formula to the geometry of our thoughts to the blueprint for a city, what's the big takeaway here? How does this give us a new lens on reality? I think the ultimate message is this. Balance isn't some magical destination you have to search for. It's a system that can be understood, designed, and tuned. It's something you build, a rhythm you can literally program into your life, and even your city, using proportion, phase, and resonance. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. If the universe really does operate on a code of balance, what could that mean for the future of human connection? I mean, if the math of harmony is real, could we one day engineer a more empathetic world? Something to think about.